My name is Nina Hale. I'm 28 years old, and I own a catering and bakery company called Marigold and Oak. We have 19 employees, 2 kitchens, and a wait list that runs 4 months deep. I built all of it from a folding table in a one-bedroom apartment, and I did it without a single dollar from my family because my family had already spent the dollars that were supposed to be mine. Last month, a resume landed in my hiring inbox for a delivery and events coordinator position. I almost scrolled past it. Then I saw the name at the top. Derek Hale, my older brother. The same brother who, 3 years ago, drained my $26,000 college fund to pay for a destination wedding in Tulum open bar, a live band flown in from Miami, a dress with a name I couldn't pronounce. He took the money I was going to use for pastry school, and he toasted his bride on a beach with it, and now his marriage was over, his money was gone, and he was applying to work for me. He'd written in his cover letter that he had always believed in supporting family businesses. He didn't know I owned it. The posting just said Marigold and Oak. To my family, my company had always been Nina's little cake thing, not a real business, just a hobby I played at because nothing else had worked out. He applied, thinking he'd be doing me a favor. What Derek didn't know was that there was a folder in the bottom drawer of my desk that I'd kept for 3 years and never opened in anger bank statements, a wire confirmation, and a string of text messages promising to pay me back that he never honored. He thought he was applying for a job. He was about to find out what I'd been keeping. Before I tell you what happened when my brother sat down across from me, do me one small favor: hit, like, and subscribe. It helps the channel more than you know. And drop your city and the time where you're watching in the comments. I love seeing where you're all tuning in from. Let me take you back to the summer the money disappeared. To understand how my brother could drain my future and feel fine about it, you have to understand the math my family ran on. In our house, love was a budget, and Derek was the line item that always got funded first. Derek was the golden one, 4 years older, charming, the kind of guy who could talk his way out of anything and usually did. My parents, Gerald and Pam, treated his every move like a headline. When he made his high school baseball team, we had a party. When I got into the state university's culinary program with a partial scholarship, my mother said, "That's nice, honey," and asked Derek if he wanted seconds. I was the steady one. The one who worked 2 jobs through high school, who saved, who did the dishes without being asked. I'd planned to work a couple of years after my associates, save up, and then go to a real pastry program, the one in the city that cost real money. The foundation of that plan was a fund my grandmother had started for me when I was a baby, 20-some thousand dollars by the time I was 25, sitting in a custodial account with my name on it. The only catch, and it's the catch that broke my life open, was that the account had been set up years ago with my father listed as the custodian, back when I was a minor. Nobody ever changed it. I trusted my family. Why wouldn't I? When Derek got engaged to a woman whose family vacationed in places I'd only seen on screensavers, the wedding became the only thing anyone talked about for a year. And destination weddings, it turns out, are expensive. Derek's fiancée wanted Tulum. Derek wanted to give it to her. And the gap between what they wanted and what they had was almost exactly the size of my college fund. I found out the way I find out most things quietly, by accident. I logged into the account to check the balance before scheduling my school deposit, and the balance was $411. There had been a withdrawal. Then a wire. My father, as custodian, had moved the money out, and the destination on the wire was a wedding planner's escrow account in Mexico. I called my mother. I was shaking. She answered on the third ring and said, before I even finished, in the calm voice of someone who had clearly rehearsed it, "Now, Nina, don't make this into a thing. It's family money. We're all family. Derek's going to pay it back, every cent, after the wedding settles down. You can go to your little baking school next year. This is just timing." It was not timing. It was theft with a smile on it. But I was 25, and I had no idea that the steady one, the quiet one, would turn out to be the only person in that family who kept the receipts. The one person who never treated me like a line item was my grandmother, Grandma Lucille. She was my mother's mother, and she was the one who'd started the fund not because she was rich, but because she'd squirreled away a little every month for 18 years out of a hairdresser's wages so that one of her grandchildren might get the schooling she never did. She chose me. She told me so. Your brother's got the gift of gab, she'd say, flouring her hands at the counter of her tiny kitchen that always smelled of brown butter and vanilla. But you've got the gift of patience, and patience is the only thing that ever built anything worth keeping. Grandma Lucille taught me to bake before I could spell my own name. Saturday mornings, standing on a stool at her counter, I learned to feel when bread dough was done by the way it pushed back against my palm. She taught me her mother's pie crust and the brown butter pound cake that would, years later, become the first thing I ever sold. She'd cup my small hands in her flour-dusted ones and say, "These are good hands, Nina. Don't ever let anybody tell you what they're worth. You'll know." She got sick the spring before the wedding and passed away that fall, about a year before Derek took the money. I think, sometimes, that they waited until she was gone. That they knew Grandma Lucille would have come down on that whole scheme like a hammer, hairdresser's wages and all. She'd have driven to that bank herself. After her funeral, I was cleaning out her kitchen. I was the one who did that. Too, and behind the flour tin I found a recipe box, her whole life, in index cards, and a note clipped to the top in her looping hand. For Nina. The money's nice, but this is the real inheritance. They can take a lot from you, baby. They can't take your hands. I didn't fully understand it then. I thought she was being sentimental, an old woman tidying up. She wasn't. A year later, when the money was gone and the school deposit was due, and I was sitting in my apartment with $411 and a broken plan, I took out that recipe box and I started to bake. Over the next 3 years, I did two things at once. I built a company and I kept records. The records came first, honestly, because I'm methodical and because something in my gut told me to. I requested the full account history from the bank, the withdrawal, the wire, the dates, the custodial signature. I screenshotted every text from my mother and brother in the months after. "We'll pay it back after the honeymoon. We'll pay it back after the deposit on the house. We'll pay it back, you know we're good for it." I put it all in a folder in the bottom drawer of my desk. I didn't do it to use it. I did it because my grandmother kept receipts, and her mother kept receipts. And the women in my family have learned the hard way that the truth needs to live somewhere in writing, or it gets rewritten by whoever talks the loudest. The company came out of necessity and grief in equal measure. I sold Grandma Lucille's brown butter pound cake at a farmer's market out of the trunk of my car, then to a coffee shop, then to. I rented time in a commercial kitchen at 4 a.m. because that's when it was cheapest. I catered my first wedding for 60 people out of that rented kitchen and cried in the walk-in cooler afterward, partly from exhaustion and partly because I kept thinking, this is what they stole from me to throw for him. A wedding. They took my education to fund a party, and now I was funding my education one party at a time. I never asked my family for help, and they never offered. What they did offer was commentary. The hardest one to file came at a cousin's baby shower, 2 years in, when my company already had a real kitchen and 6 employees. I overheard my mother in the next room, telling my Aunt Diane in the easy voice people use for things they've said many times. "Oh, Nina's still doing her little cake thing. It's cute. Keeps her busy. We always thought she'd land somewhere real eventually, but, some kids just don't have the ambition Derek has. Some kids just don't have the ambition." I was running payroll for 6 families. I had a 4-month wait list, and to her, I was a girl playing with frosting, because nothing real had worked out. I didn't say anything. I drove home, and I baked until 2 in the morning, and I thought about my grandmother's hands cupping mine. Don't ever let anybody tell you what they're worth. If you've ever poured your whole life into something real and had your family call it cute, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. The folder might have stayed in that drawer forever if it weren't for Renee. Renee was the accountant I'd hired the year the company outgrew my shoebox of receipts, a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd cleaned up the books of 100 small businesses and seen every flavor of family money gone wrong. When she was setting up my records, I told her the short version of the fund, just so she'd understand why my starting capital was, technically, zero. She put down her pen. "You have documentation of all that?" I told her I did. The bank history, the wire, the texts. "Keep it," she said. "Not because you're going to sue your brother. That ship has mostly sailed, and lawsuits cost more than they return. Keep it, because someday, somebody in that family is going to try to rewrite what happened. They always do. And when they do, you're not going to argue with them. You're going to be the only person in the room holding the paper." She slid my own folder back across the desk to me. "The loudest person wins every argument that's only made out of memory. Nobody wins an argument against a bank statement." I put the folder back in the drawer. I didn't think I'd ever take it out. Then, 3 years after the money disappeared, my hiring manager forwarded me a resume with a note. "For your information, this guy has your last name. Relative? He's applying for the events coordinator role. Wanted to flag before I schedule anything." I opened it. Derek Hale, my brother, applying to work for me. I didn't respond to the application right away. I just sat with it. Then, the same week, and I don't believe in coincidence, where my family is concerned, my mother called me for the first time in 2 months. Her voice was warm in the specific way it gets when she needs something. "Nina, honey, I want to invite you to a family dinner Sunday. Just us. It's been too long." A pause. "And, well, I'm sure you've heard Derek's had a rough go. The divorce, and the job market's just brutal right now. He's been struggling." Another pause. And here it came. "He mentioned he applied to your little catering company. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Family helping family. You could give your brother a hand up. Lord knows the family's always been there for you." The family had always been there for me. They'd been there with a wire transfer to Mexico. They'd been there to call my life's work cute. "I'll be at dinner," I said. "Oh, good. So you'll give him the job?" "I'll be at dinner, Mom." She took that as a yes, the way she takes everything as the answer she wants. After she hung up, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and took out the folder for the first time in 3 years. I didn't feel angry. I felt clear, the way you feel when a long, blurry thing finally comes into focus. They had told Derek it was a done deal. They had decided, again, without me, that what was mine was theirs to give away. I made a copy of every page. I put the copies in a clean envelope. And on Sunday, I drove to my parents' house with the envelope on the passenger seat, where the family used to put the things that mattered more than me. Dinner was an ambush dressed as a reunion. I knew it the moment I walked in. Derek was there in a blazer, freshly shaved, rehearsed. My father hovered. My mother had made a roast and set the table with the good plates, and there was a celebratory feeling in the air. The feeling of people who believe a decision has already been made, and they're just waiting for the paperwork. My 17-year-old sister, Tessa, sat at the end of the table with her shoulders up around her ears, watching everything, the way I used to. We got through the salad before my mother set down her fork and began. "Nina, we wanted tonight to be about family coming back together. Derek's ready to work hard. He's got so much experience with events. You saw his wedding. It was beautiful." She smiled. "It just makes sense. You help him now, and someday it comes back around. That's how family works." Derek leaned in. "I know I've got a lot to learn about your operation, but I'm a fast study, and honestly, Nina, I think I could really help you scale. You've done a cute job with this, but you need someone with a bigger vision in the room." A cute job, a bigger vision. He had drained my future to throw a party, and he had walked in here to offer me his. I didn't raise my voice. I've learned that silence does more work than anything you can shout in a room full of people who are used to being agreed with. "Before I answer," I said, I want to make sure we're all working from the same set of facts, because I think the story this family tells about me has some gaps in it. I took the envelope out of my bag and set it on the table, next to the roast. 3 years ago, I said. The college fund Grandma Lucille spent 18 years building for me $26,040 was withdrawn from my custodial account and wired to a wedding planner's escrow account in Mexico. I opened the envelope and laid the pages out one at a time, calm, the way Renee taught me, the way you lay out evidence and let it speak. Here's the withdrawal. Here's the wire. Here's the date 11 days before Derek's wedding. I set down the next page. And here are the texts. We'll pay it back after the honeymoon. We'll pay it back after the house. 3 years of we'll pay it back. And the balance returned to me is $0.00. The table had gone silent. My father was staring at the plates. My mother's mouth opened and closed. That's not Nina, that was family money, my mother said. We always meant to. It was my money, I said. Grandma chose me. She put my name on it. And the reason none of you ever worried about taking it is the same reason you're all sitting here certain I'll hand Derek a job tonight. You decided a long time ago that whatever's mine is really the family's, and whatever's the family's is really Derek's. I looked at my brother. You didn't apply to my company because you respect what I built. You applied because you still think it's cute. Because it never once occurred to you that the girl whose future you spent might have built something you'd be lucky to work for. Derek's face had gone the color of the tablecloth. Nina, come on. I was going to pay you back. I know, I said. You've been going to pay me back for 3 years. I let the silence sit. Then I told them what was going to happen, the way you read out a final number on a balance sheet. Factual, complete. No revision pending. I'm not going to humiliate you, Derek. I'm not going to press anything or call anyone. Grandma wouldn't have wanted that, and frankly, I have a business to run that's bigger than my anger. I gathered the pages back into the envelope. But I'm not giving you a job. You don't put the person who drained your bank account in charge of your events budget. That's not revenge. That's just bookkeeping. My mother started to cry the performed kind, the kind meant to recruit the room. After everything we did raising you. You did raise me, I said, and I'm grateful for the parts that were real. But the lie that this family was ever there for me the way you're asking me to be there for Derek that ends tonight, the help in this family only ever ran one direction. I'm not angry about it anymore. I'm just done pretending it ran both ways. Then I did the one thing I decided in the car. I took out a second, smaller envelope and set it in front of Derek. That's a payment schedule. Renee drew it up. $26,040, no interest, whatever monthly amount you can actually manage, in writing. You pay back what was taken not to buy a job, not to buy my forgiveness, just because it's owed. You do that, and the door to a relationship with me stays open. The door to my company stays closed. Those are two different doors. I stood up. Take the schedule. Or don't. That part's yours. If you've ever had to draw a line with the people who were supposed to protect you and do it without becoming cruel, tell me about it in the comments. Those are the ones that stay with me. It was Tessa who followed me out. My little sister caught me on the porch in the cold, no coat, 17 and shaking. She'd been 14 when the money disappeared. Old enough to have seen it. Young enough that no one thought she was watching. I knew it was wrong, she said, the words tumbling out. When it happened. I heard Mom and Dad talking about borrowing from your account. And I didn't understand all of it, but I knew it was wrong. And I didn't say anything because I was a kid and I was scared and I figured somebody older would fix it. Her chin trembled. Nobody fixed it. I'm sorry, Nina. I should have told you what I heard. I pulled her into my coat. You were 14. You're telling me now. That counts more than you know. They're going to do it to me too, aren't they? She said into my shoulder. I've got a fund. For school. It's in Dad's name. She pulled back and looked at me, scared and clear-eyed at the same time. How do I stop them? And there it was the real reason my grandmother kept receipts. passed down to a third generation on a freezing porch. First thing Monday, I said, you and I are going to the bank, and we're going to change the custodian to you the day you turn 18, and we're going to print every statement and keep it somewhere safe. Not because we want to fight, because the truth should live somewhere in writing. I tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the way Grandma Lucille used to do to me. And on Saturdays, if you want, you can come to the kitchen. I'll teach you the pound cake. It's really Grandma's. It was always going to be yours, too. Tessa laughed through her tears. I'm a terrible baker. So was I said. Patience is the only thing that ever built anything worth keeping. You've got time to learn it. I didn't gloat. There's nothing to win when the prize is finally understanding that the people who were supposed to invest in you spent you instead and called it love. Derek took the payment schedule. I'll give him that. The first payment came 2 months later, $150, with a text that just said sorry. For real this time. It's not much against 26,000, and I don't know if he'll ever finish it. But it's the first dollar that's ever flowed back toward me in this family, and I've decided to let that mean something. We're not close. We may never be. But there's a door, and it's honest now, and honest is more than we ever had. My mother didn't speak to me for a month. When she finally called, it wasn't an apology, it was a small, cracked voice saying, I didn't realize how it looked from where you were standing. Which is not, I'm sorry. But from my mother, it was a long way down a road she'd never walked. I told her we could start there. Slowly. My father surprised me. He came by Marigold and Oak on a Tuesday, stood in the middle of my kitchen watching 19 people move like a machine I'd built, and he got quiet, and then he said, I had no idea it was this. I'm sorry I called it your little cake thing. I'm sorry I signed that wire. He didn't make excuses. He bought a pound cake on his way out and paid full price, and I let him, because some debts you settle in dollars and some you settle by letting a man stand in the thing he doubted and finally see it. Tessa comes to the kitchen most Saturdays now. She's getting better. She has Grandma's patience, it turns out. She just never had anywhere to put it. I keep my grandmother's recipe box on a shelf above the main prep station where the whole company can see it, and on the bad days I take down the card with the notes still clipped to the top. They can take a lot from you, baby. They can't take your hands. So here's what I want to say to you, if you're listening and the people who were supposed to invest in you spent you instead. Your worth was never the money they took or the title they wouldn't give you. The people who measure you by what you can be spent on are reading the wrong column entirely. They can drain an account. They cannot drain what someone who truly loved you put into your hands. Build with that. It's the one inheritance no one can wire to Mexico. A quiet verdict doesn't have to be loud to be final. That's my story. If it made you feel something, anger or relief, or maybe just a little less alone, then it did what I hoped it would. Here's my question for you. What's the one thing in your life that no one could ever take because someone gave it to you in a way that can't be stolen? Tell me below. I read every single one. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you in the next one.